Hello, everyone, and welcome to Look Down There, the show where we talk about all the things that we don't talk about. I'm your host, Michelle Amore. Today, we are talking about pussy food. That's right. What you eat greatly impacts your vulvo-vaginal health and well-being. My guest today is here to tell us all about it. She is a certified nutritional practitioner, and she is joining us today from Toronto. Please welcome the Yoni Nutritionist, Adrienne Rommel.
Wow, that was
Welcome.
such a great introduction. Thank you.
Oh,
Thanks for having
Adrienne,
me.
you're combining two of my favorite things, food and yonis. Tell
Yeah.
me all about it.
Oh man, where do I start? Well, I started doing this because of my own vaginal health journey that I have struggled with ever since I became sexually active at 15 years old. And it's just been issue after issue after issue, from chronic yeast infections to UTIs to bacterial vaginosis to an HPV diagnosis to a genital herpes diagnosis, and just chronic issues basically since then. And I'm almost 40, so almost more than half my life now. And it wasn't until like my mid 30s where it really got bad and I was struggling with something called Candida overgrowth. I'll explain a little bit what that is. And not a lot of people are aware of this, but that was kind of the icing on the cake for me, where I really took control of my health and did my own research despite doctors just telling me it was a yeast infection or just sending me home with medication. But these chronic issues kept persisting. And I'm like, there's something wrong with me. Like, there's that something goes much deeper than that. And when I discovered that I had Candida overgrowth and it was connected to the health of my gut and my diet, I was really shocked because I didn't know that our vaginal health was connected to our diet and our gut health. So I did all the research. I did a Candida elimination diet and it worked. And I was like, oh my God, like light bulbs and sirens and flashing red lights went off. And I was like, how come people aren't talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
How come my doctor didn't know about this? Like, why isn't anybody telling me? And I'm like, I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Yeah, that is so frustrating. I mean, I definitely feel you on that. Like not in those experiences, but I've had struggles with autoimmune disease my whole life, and I have alopecia, and I really didn't find any answers in the Western medical field. As much as I kept trying, and all the doctors and blood tests and levels and everything that I could test, no one really had any answers for me. And I kept thinking, there must be something that I can do. There must be. And that's when I discovered, like you, nutrition and leaky gut and candida and all these things, and how our bodies react to what we're ingesting. And it sounds so simple. Like, of course, our bodies should be reacting to what we ingest, but we're just not used to thinking of food as medicine. We're used to thinking of, little pills as medicine, and anything outside of that is crazy,
Yeah.
right? And it's just food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that when these chronic issues keep happening, that's your body screaming that something is wrong. When they keep happening over and over in the same way, it's just like your body is reacting. And we are meant to heal our bodies naturally. That's the way the body is meant to. Sure, sometimes it depends on our concerns. Sometimes we need these assistance of Western medicine in combination with diet and lifestyle and managing our stress and everything that we put into our mouths and into our minds. It's all connected.
Right. Yeah, the gut and brain connection is so important. And one of the things that I found interesting was how much gluten affects our moods. And once I eliminated that from my diet, which was very difficult, by the way, I don't know if you experienced that, but I felt better, like my mood was better. And now I find if I have a little bit of gluten, I'm deeply, darkly depressed for days. So did you find that in your elimination? Like, was it difficult for you to move into this elimination diet? Because I know that's a really tricky diet, the Candida diet.
Hmm. Yeah, it was really difficult. And the gluten as well for me was difficult, but the sugar was the most difficult. And that's, I think, what most people struggle with as we live, especially in North America, we are all addicted to sugar, and that was the toughest part to eliminate and just changing your habits and changing the way you think about food and your relationship with food, but also having to, because otherwise it's like the consequences are worse than the actual having to change your diet for me anyways.
Right. Yeah. And I can imagine there's so much shame connected to the issues that you were talking about with HPV and Candida and yeast infections and UTIs and herpes. And, it's not just a health issue anymore. Suddenly it becomes a societal issue, a cultural issue. How does the world view you? And then how do you start viewing yourself, and what things do you take on just because your body's having this reaction?
Yeah, totally. I always say that our vaginal health is connected to our emotional health. It's very connected. And for me personally, like when I was experiencing chronic issues, like chronic yeast infections, chronic herpes outbreaks, there was a period of time in my life when I went back to school in my mid 30s to become a nutritionist when I was like, oh my God, this candida thing works. I need to like help everybody with this. When I went back to school, my stress level went from here to like here. And I didn't realize how stressed I was. But my herpes outbreaks, I was getting them once or twice a month, back to back to back to back for like 2 years, almost without a break. And it started to really impact my mental health and my emotional health and my self-confidence and my sexuality. I've always been a very openly sexual and sensual person, but that just started to change everything for me. Was I started to like internalize the shame and stigma of having an STI myself, because I believe in disclosure practices before having sex with a new partner, and having gotten rejected a couple of times, that really is a blow to the ego. But oh, there's just so many emotions connected to it.
Yeah, and that stress. It's funny you mentioned, you sometimes don't even know how much stress you're under, but your body will always let you know.
Yeah, and when you experience chronic vaginal health issues, it's always on your mind. You're
Mm.
always worried about it. And you're always like, it really is an emotional and psychological thing too. It's a bit of a mind fuck, to be honest, part of my language. But it really does start to affect your mental health, because you're just constantly thinking and worrying about it. Like to me, it was almost to the point of obsession. I'd get a mirror and look down there every hour, you know, and just to like, oh my God, is there anything going on? Like, can I have sex today? Like, what's happening? It was, it was really bad for a really long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, at least it kind of made you really connected to your body. Maybe not in the most healthy way, but at least made you very aware and present in a way that maybe some people aren't.
Definitely, definitely. Like, I've had to learn how to eat for my vagina, and I have literally learned how to revolve my life around my vaginal health, because I have to. I like sometimes I look at people who can just eat anything they want and drink anything they want and not have to worry about getting a yeast infection or getting a herpes outbreak or anything like that. But I can't. I've gone off the tracks a couple of times throughout my health and healing journey ever since I went back to school to become a nutritionist. And I noticed that, that's when I get issues. So I really have learned how to eat, how to live my life, how to sleep around my vaginal health.
Yeah, and yeah, it's so important. And if you didn't do those elimination diets beforehand, you wouldn't actually know what things were affecting you in that way. Like, oh, when I eat this, then my vagina feels like this, and then I feel like this, right? So, what are some of those? What are some of these things that we should keep in mind? Like you mentioned Candida a few times. What is that, and how can we eat to eliminate side effects of Candida? Because there's quite a few. It's not just vaginal health, but it can really interrupt a lot of systems.
Oh yeah, it's Candida overgrowth is really interesting because it's almost like an invisible pandemic that not everybody knows about and doctors don't talk about because they don't really know much about it. And I think it's starting to catch on these days because I think a lot of people struggle with Candida overgrowth and don't even know it. So Candida overgrowth, just like high level, is we all have this fungus called Candida albicans in our guts. There's a bunch of different species of them. I think there's like 20 or something different species. And they're involved in, or they're responsible for nutrient absorption, digestion, and all kinds of normal functions in the gut. But what happens is when they overgrow, that's when we start getting problems, health problems, like skin conditions like acne, eczema, rosacea, psoriasis, rashes, hives, um, environmental allergies and sensitivities, chronic sinus infections, joint pain, sugar, carb cravings, chronic illnesses because our immune system is suppressed. Oh my God, there's so many. Like brain fog, low energy, depression and anxiety, bloating, digestive issues like bloating, constipation, and gas, but also the vaginal health issues, chronic yeast infections, chronic bacterial vaginosis infections, chronic UTIs. And even for somebody who lives with herpes or HPV or both, like I do, it is it contributes it because it suppresses your immune system. You can get recurring outbreaks. I always see a Candida and herpes connection with the clients that I work with. That's kind of how it works. So with the Candida, in order to get rid of it, the only thing that works is a diet, and it's a specific antifungal food nutritional protocol as well as a supplement protocol. So what you can eat
It's good to
are,
start with that. Yeah, what you
yeah,
can eat.
there's actually a lot of different things that you can eat and a lot of different varieties and ways to cook them. And online now, there's so many wonderful recipes available. I couldn't believe it when I've been researching recipes lately. But basically, you can eat lean sources of good quality protein, animal protein, or vegan sources of protein for people who are plant based, as well as low starch vegetables or carbs. So, those things are like leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, anything green. And low starch carbs would be things like quinoa and millet.
Hmm.
And then good fats is the third one. So, like anything avocado, anything coconut, nuts and seeds, really good quality oils. So, those are the main three things that you would eat on a Candida diet. You can't eat inflammatory foods, which are gluten, dairy, and sugar, anything that causes inflammation in the body. Fruits are a no-no because even though they are natural sugar and maybe good sugar, as people will say, but when you struggle with Candida overgrowth, Candida doesn't care where the sugar is coming from. It just recognizes it as sugar. It doesn't matter if it's healthy from fruit or white sugar from, processed refined candies that we eat. It doesn't dis- differentiate the source of food because that's its favorite food. So basically, no carbs, no junk food, no processed food. It's all natural, all whole foods, which is what we want to be eating anyway. And really, really good quality sources of protein, good fat, and low starch vegetables or low starch carbs.
Yeah, before I began this diet, I've been paleo for about 5 years or so now, and before that it was like pasta all the time, cheese all the time, and bourbon was my drink of choice. So
Yeah.
it was like learning about all of this stuff was so daunting and so overwhelming. So what do you say to people out there who are listening to this saying what am I supposed to eat? Like I know you said like okay, I can eat salad and green things. Well, that's not fun. Like well, how am I supposed to live, right? So what kind of things can you say to people who are thinking things like that right now?
I'm actually doing a Candida elimination diet right now. I'm doing it as a group program, which I do every year, once a year in January. And my clients have said the same thing. Like when they first started it, they were just like, oh my God, how the hell am I going to make it through this? This is going to be miserable. My life is over. I can't eat all my favorite things. Restricting, like fear, restriction, there's just that kind of mindset. But when you think about it as from an abundance mindset. Like when you think about it as like, I'm really struggling with my health and I choose to do this and I choose to eat in this way because this is going to be healing for me and this is going to help me so much in the long term and it's going to be an experience that will change my life. I know because it changed mine, like it's why I do what I do. And we're now 3 weeks into the program. Like I feel amazing. My skin looks amazing. Like I have more energy and I feel more positive and optimistic about life. And my clients are saying the same thing. Like they were saying, I thought that this was going to be miserable when I first started, but it's not that hard. I mean, working with somebody like me really helps because I give you the tools and the support to know what to do. You just have to do it. But for some people, that's really hard. For some people, it's really hard to change their lifestyle, their eating habits that they've been accustomed to their whole lives. But when you're suffering with your health, like you got to ask yourself, what's more worth it? The discomfort of changing your habits, which you'll once you get used to it, it'll be easy, or suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned having that support, and the support is so important because it's hard for us to make change of any kind if we don't have the support around us constantly reinforcing that positive change, right? And we're in a culture where we celebrate with food. We celebrate with drink. We treat ourselves. We have comfort foods. We binge, right? Like this is how we're living. And so it's hard, if you're in a family and your family doesn't understand why you're doing this or they want to have the pasta and you can't. And so you're feeling left out and isolated, right? So how can we how can we push past that?
It's such a good question because in the program that I'm doing right now, one of my clients comes from an Indian cultural background, and she lives with her husband and her in-laws, and they're all eating normal foods while she is having to do a Candida elimination diet. And it's been really tough for her until she showed them like the material and the videos and stuff in my program and showed them like this is what I'm dealing with. This is real. And this is what I'm struggling with right now. And they really understood that and they started like kind of catering more towards her needs based on what she can eat in her Candida diet because her in-laws cook for her. But aside from that, that's just an example, but we all have our relationships with food, whether it be habitual, comfort, cultural, whatever. And those are the hardest things to change. But again, like it's just a matter of choice. When you're doing a gut healing protocol, when you have to, because you're struggling with your health, it's like you kind of just have to do it and you adapt. And another thing to remember is that it's only temporary. It is not forever. A Candida elimination diet is not forever. Depending on the severity of your overgrowth or whatever health issue you're struggling with, it could take 6 weeks, it could take 8 weeks, but it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, and I think what's really good in taking this step for yourself and making yourself a priority is learning how to speak up for yourself. I mean, right now it's not really such a big deal because we're not going out to restaurants, but one of the things for me was going out to a restaurant and saying like, please don't include this or that, or it doesn't have gluten, and like learning how to speak up for your needs, which I think a lot of us women especially don't really do.
Yes, totally. It's a great way to set boundaries. Like, especially going out with friends, people are like, have a drink. And you're like, as hard as that is sometimes to say no, it's like, no, I can't right now. I'm healing.
Yeah, right. So it's not forever, but
No.
you can reintroduce some food slowly. Um, but how often should you do an elimination diet like this?
I like to do it once a year. Especially if I haven't been consistent with it, like in 2020, it was just such a shit show of a year.
Yeah.
So I really kind of went off the tracks in the summertime and had to get back on it because I noticed, ooh, I'm starting to get yeast infections again. Like, ooh, my skin is starting to get really bad. So I like to do this once a year as like a really great refresh and a reset of my gut health. And I call this like a gut healing protocol. It is for a purpose. It's like a therapeutic purpose. And then afterwards, it's about reintroducing foods to maintain your gut health. And like you, I love the paleo diet. That really works for me too. And I like to follow an 80-20 rule. 80% paleo, 20% enjoy my life because we need to enjoy our lives. Like food is such a pleasurable experience, and drinking, if that's what you're into, like if you restrict yourself, you're setting yourself up for failure. But about maintaining a balance and
Yeah.
not like swinging from one end of the spectrum to the other. And then, yeah.
Yeah. At least now when I decide to have cheese, I know what I'm in for. And I can weigh out that risk and be like, yeah, it's fine. Like I'll deal with it.
It's worth the consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Um,
isn't it funny, like when you do an elimination diet or like you eat very clean, and then when you have an indulgence like that, like isn't it the best thing you've ever tasted in your life?
yeah. I'm like, do people know about this?
Yeah, like
Um, so how did you find that in the changing your nutrition and how you approached food? How did you find your cycles? Like, did you find maybe a decrease in symptoms of PMS, or there's also PMDD? Did you notice any change for that?
um that's a really good question, and I should start monitoring that. I definitely am going to monitor it this cycle because I've been on this detox. I find that when I do eat clean throughout a month and I limit my caffeine intake and I limit my alcohol intake, my PMS is not as bad because I get bad PMS. Like I need to isolate myself for 3 days, bad PMS. Um, and my periods are usually pretty normal and pretty much the same. But yeah, I guess I would say I notice if I've kind of gone off the tracks a bit, my PMS is worse than when I'm eating clean.
Yeah, yeah. I feel that way too about drinking. I definitely drink a lot less these days, but I do notice that if I'm indulging a little bit more than normal, I do have more symptoms of PMS, meaning like I'm much more moody.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the hormonal connection and a lot of these like chronic vaginal health issues because I get a lot of people, a lot of women, or people who have vulvas and vaginas are saying to me that they experience their chronic vaginal health issues either between ovulation and their period or right after. And our hormones have a lot to do with that. And the change of hormones in our bodies, it can really stress our bodies out. A lot of women get yeast infections before their period, herpes outbreaks. bacterial vaginosis. They start noticing a different smell or different discharge down there. So it's really interesting how it's connected to our menstrual cycle as well, which also is connected to our gut health.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as frustrating as all of this is, our bodies are amazing, and how they really adjust for all these variances throughout the day, throughout the month, and how they respond to outside influences like food and drink and stressors, you know. And people always used to say that, oh, aren't bodies amazing? And I'd be like, yeah, but my body is pissing me off right now, and you don't understand. And now it's like, well, yeah, no, they are pretty amazing.
Yeah, they will, like, your body will tell you when something is wrong. It's just, we live in such a fast-paced culture, like go, 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 like work, work, work. I should this, I should be doing this, should. We rarely have time to like slow down, get quiet, and listen to what our bodies are telling us because it tells us.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
we just like push it aside and just be like, oh, I'll just take some Advil and then it'll go away. Well, no.
Yeah. The practice of presence is very difficult but so important, especially when we're trying to heal things like this. And I think, you know, paying attention to your food is a great way to be present, because you can notice those changes in your body, and you can notice when, yeah, you do go off the rails, and you can see that change, right, where normally you may not have seen that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our bodies are really sensitive. Like, notice how you feel after you eat something. If you notice that you're feeling bloating, gassy, abdominal cramping, stuff like that, that means you may have a bit of a sensitivity to that, as opposed to like, oh, I'll just take an antacid or a Tums or something like that and then just continue eating it. It's like, you kind of have to pay attention to those signs
Yeah.
because
So
it'll tell you.
what are some good foods for your yoni?
So I love good fats. I love avocados. I love salmon. I love nuts and seeds. I love, you know, also like low starchy vegetables, like I was mentioning in the Candida diet. That's pretty much how I eat all the time anyway. But the good thing about good fats is that it just is so helpful to so many things, to our mental health, to our hormonal health, and especially our vaginal health, because it helps to strengthen the vaginal walls, helps with vaginal lubrication, and is just like really good for the gut, and has so many different vitamins and nutrients that you would think like, oh, I'm not going to eat. Like, you just have to be careful with the amount of good fats that you're eating. You don't want to overindulge because you can gain weight. It's fat. You have to eat them in moderation. But those are the best things that I could recommend for vaginal health.
Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
I'm so happy that we got to have this chat today. Again, it's like two of my favorite topics.
I'm so happy too.
Yeah.
Thanks
So
for having me.
oh, thank you for doing this. Where can people find out more, or perhaps work with you? Where can
Yeah. So I have a bunch of different ways that I can help people who have vaginas and vulvas. I have my Instagram, which is at Yoni Nutritionist. That's, I guess, my main platform because I share a ton of super valuable information throughout my Instagram. I have almost 300 posts with like a ton of really awesome content about all kinds of different things, from yeast infections to BV to herpes to HPV to just general yoni health information to sex to like fun things that I like to talk about. I also have a TikTok, which is I like to use for fun. I have my website, which is yoninutritionist.com, where I have some really valuable blog posts that I've written, which if people are looking for advice, you can get some pretty high level information there, as well as my Instagram. But if you really want to go deep and you really want to do the work to get rid of any kind of chronic vaginal infection, which is what I specialize in. So yeast infections, Candida overgrowth, bacterial vaginosis, HPV, and herpes. And this year I'm going to create a program on UTIs. I have a bunch of different online programs that will help people with vaginas and vulvas with all of those things. So I have like they're kind of like online ebooks, and then I have my Fuck Candida online Candida Elimination program, which I do as a group training once a year, and I've got it as an individual program. It's like me giving you a presentation over 6 weeks. And it just basically gives you the tools and the knowledge of how to do these things. And you just have to do it. So it's kind of like me virtually holding your hand. And I also offer one on one support for people who value that and need that. But I also have my online programs that have been helping so many people. And it's just kind of like take the information, take it at your own pace. And yeah, it's information that you'll have for life and experiences that will change your life. And I know because it's changed mine, it's changed yours too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for having the courage to speak out about things that may have been shameful or embarrassing. Like, we need people like this in the world because we all have these questions and we're all afraid to ask. So, I'm so happy that you exist and Yoni Nutritionist exists. I love it. That,
Thank you. Yeah, there's such a huge gap between Western medicine and holistic like healing practices. So I'm kind of trying to help to close that gap and to just inform and educate people on these things that are so common, like so common. And I've, you know, learned how to do it all myself, and I've created ways to help other people do it too.
it's brilliant. Doing the goddess's work right there, Adrian.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so make sure that you follow Adrian at Yoni Nutritionist or visit yoninutritionist.com. And as always, spread your legs and spread the love. Share us, like us, love us, subscribe, follow, all the things at I Look Down There or lookdownthere.com. And you can follow me and all of my happenings at michelleamore.com. And a reminder to grab a mirror and look down there. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.